Today's webinar, Capgemini and SAP present Everything as a Service, Model and Subscription Billing. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will share the link with you after the presentation is complete. We welcome you to revisit the content for yourself and share it with your colleagues. At the bottom of your screen are multiple engagement tools you can use. Feel free to move them around or expand or maximize as needed. We also invite your comments and questions. Please look at the Q&A chat box on your screen. We will try to answer these during the webinar, but if fuller answers are needed, we will answer them later via email. And with that, I'd like to pass it along to Andrew Daly to begin today's webinar.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and welcome to our session, Everything as a Service, brought to you by Capgemini and SAP. My name is Andrew Daly of MGI Research. Organizations of all sizes and across all industry types are rethinking and reinventing how they package, price, deliver, and service their customers. And the adoption of everything as a service or an as-a-service model has really gained widespread traction across all industries. We're going to be talking about why this is happening, how companies are successfully making this shift to an as-a-service business model, and what is required from a people, process, and tooling perspective. After some introductions of our lineup of experts and practitioners, I'll kick us off with a short presentation on why monetization matters in the context of business models like an as-a-service model. And then we'll get into a live case study from the world's largest technology distributor, Ingram Micro, as they present their journey to an as-a-service model and the learnings that they've taken away from that process. Then we'll dive into Q&A with our gurus from SAP and Capgemini. So with that, let's do some quick introductions. Again, I'm Andrew Daly of MGI. Joining me, Ken Christ from SAP, Suraj Ramakrishnan from Capgemini, Mike Curl, the dulcet tone ninja from Capgemini, Rag Rosha from Ingram Micro, and his colleague, Hiren Patel, and Amit Habib from Capgemini joins us as well in the Q&A. So with that, let me jump into our session, a quick background on MGI Research. We were founded in 2008 by top-ranked analysts from firms like Gartner, Morgan Stanley, MasterCard, and ING. We provide subscription-based research, advisory services, benchmarks, and best practices uniquely focused in the area of what we call agile monetization, as we help organizations rethink really their quote to cash, or as we like to think about it, their prospect to disclosure cycle. So that's who we are. Let me jump into why does monetization matter in the context of an as-a-service or even a subscription-based billing kind of experience. And when you step back from it and think about it, we may or may not experience or engage with a company on a weekly or monthly basis, but we probably receive a bill from them. And in that moment, when we receive a bill, it's an opportunity to either denigrate the customer experience or elevate that customer experience. And as consumers, either as individuals or professionals, we make judgments about a company and a brand based off of the accuracy, the timeliness, and the transparency of a simple bill. So we see billing and monetization as core to the customer experience. In addition to that, billing and monetization has really gone from being viewed as a back office kind of function to being front and center to driving our businesses going forward. And why is that? Because when we make a shift in our business model, underneath that, we have to have the ability to monetize. And to be able to do that, as I mentioned, with transparency, with accuracy, with timeliness. And that is not so easy to do. And when we think about going from selling a physical good to selling a physical and digital goods and services, or a hybrid model, behind that, we really have to have an ability to keep track of everything in an accurate and timely way. So this has gone from back office to really front and center in driving our businesses going forward. This is the now famous 13 deadly sins of monetization that we see from MGI Research. One way to look at this is what's holding organizations back from adopting new business models. We have yet to go into any company in the world and not find 3 or more of these as being fundamental barriers to adopting a new business model or driving more agility into the business. And we'll talk about some of these specific items later in our session. I talk about monetization. At MGI, we believe definitions are very important. We define monetization as how efficiently and effectively market demand is created and then translated into revenue, profits, and competitive differentiation. It's not a product or single business process. It's a business practice supported by technology tools, skilled professionals, and the business workflows that we put around that. Over 5 years ago, we came up with this conceptual architecture of what does it take to monetize in a modern organization today. There's about 10 sub-disciplines. This model is conceptual. This is not something you can buy in the marketplace today, but these are the underlying ingredients that are necessary for any company today to monetize. And it's everything from e-commerce to billing to CRM to CPQ, and everything else you see here. No presentation today would be complete without some commentary on what is life going to be in a post-COVID world. And a lot of the obvious stuff, more investment in omni-channel commerce, more investment in new business models, event-based, usage-based, outcome-based business models. That's all kind of the obvious stuff. But what's not so obvious, and what we're seeing increasingly, is that the learnings from the past 15 plus months are really creating a dichotomy in organizations. And what do I mean by that? We're seeing that some companies are beginning to slide back into their comfortable ways and business practices that they had prior to the pandemic. And on the other hand, we see organizations that are taking the learnings from the pandemic, a focus on agility, a focus on the customer, a focus on much, much faster cycle times, and are really driving that even harder into their business. And we believe that over the next 2 to 3 years, the organizations that don't take these learnings and really push hard on them are really going to suffer competitively in the marketplace over the coming months and years here. What are some of the key trends? We'll talk specifically about some of these. In particular, when we talk about everything as a service or an as-a-service business model, one piece that comes out of that is multi-sided or multi-tiered business models. So when we deliver a service, a digital service, often there are content providers and other service providers that we have to settle up with in either real time or near real time as a part of the monetization of the overall model. We see more emphasis on collections. That's something that obviously was a priority in the pandemic. We think there's going to be increased investment in that area going forward. We see a lot of attention and focus around order management. How do we unify the product catalog? How do we unify our price list so there's one single source of truth? And then the whole area of entitlements. How do we make sure that our customers get what they receive, not any more and not any less? And one final note before we dive into our case study here is that this market is not a one-size-fits-all market. And we encourage our clients to take a look at what is kind of the complexity of your business, what's the volume of your business. So when you think about adopting a subscription model, when you think about adopting an as-a-service model or a usage-based, some of the things I talked about, you really think through what are the appropriate tools to fit your specific use case. There are a couple other slides here. I'll leave them for your reading pleasure later, but let me just jump into handing it off to Rag and Haren from Ingram Micro. Gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm Kiran Patel, Director of Global Business Process at Ingram Micro. A little bit about Ingram Micro. We are the world's largest technology distributor. We help businesses realize the promise of technology and are a vital link to the technology supply chain. A bit more about our footprint. So we have a vast global infrastructure. We have a focus on cloud, commerce and lifecycle services, and technology solutions, and serve over 250,000 customers around the world, represent over 2,000 suppliers, and have over 189 logistics and service centers worldwide. So let's discuss our initiative. So as the industries across the globe, and as Andrew described, are rapidly shifting to subscription and consumption-based business models, Ingram Micro is undertaking a significant digital transformation to support these models. We have created imperatives to our designs as we move forward. So those imperatives are agility, scalability, standardization, and financial compliance. Agility ensures us that the solution can change as the models are changing rapidly. Scalability enables us to grow the solution, and standardization assists us in streamlining processes. And financial compliance ensures that we're compliant with the solution as we move forward. So let's talk about how BRIM is supporting those imperatives. So we're using BRIM with other integrated applications, but for our commerce and lifecycle services business, Shipwire, we are using the full BRIM capabilities. And for technology solutions, we are using BRIM to enable key finance processes such as billing, accounts payable, and revenue recognition. A little bit more about the BRIM capabilities for Shipwire. It's allowed for central repository of all services, integration of multiple logistics data points for billing, as well as full credit and AR functionalities such as collections and dunning. So it's really given us a stack that we can have full subscription management and AR and collections functionality. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Rag, to provide more details on both of these transformations.
Thanks, Kiran. So on Shipwire, which is one of our logistics platforms, I want to share with you this very high-level, simplified design. What I'm planning to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about this design for Shipwire, then our design for tax solutions, and then we'll talk a little bit about our journey with tax solutions in transforming from SKU-based business model into everything as a service. So for Shipwire, we have a very simple implementation of BRIM in the sense that it's the full BRIM solution that you can see right in the middle. And it's connected to our Shipwire platform. Basically, through this platform, we get orders from all sorts of online marketplaces and provide fulfillment to our customers, our merchants who are selling on those marketplaces. We are leveraging also a number of warehouses that we have all over the world in order to provide those fulfillment services. And we have this LDB, which is our logistics database with all the warehouse activities stored in one single place. This will send the information so that on BRIM we can create our consumable item type, rate that, and proceed with our recurring invoicing for our customers. We went live with this solution in August last year. We had millions and millions of orders going through the system. The real detailed solution is composed by 12 different systems with 43 interfaces. But all things considered, we had a very short project. We started end of 2019, and by August 2020, we were live. It was a very straightforward implementation. Now, on our technology solution side, it's a little more complicated because here we're really talking about the core business of the company. We're talking about systems and processes that have been in place for over 40 years now. And just to put this solution in place, we had to integrate over 20 different systems between legacy and new systems. The core of our solution here is not just BRIM, but also our Cloud Blue platform, which is a platform that we have been building over the past 8 or 9 years, and is in charge of all the integrations with our vendors, as well as order management and rating. And like Hiran said before, on SAP BRIM, we have CI, we have FICA, and we have RAR running for this solution. You can see at the top right corner, IM360. That is a CRM system. It's a Microsoft Dynamics CRM. And our first implementation that went live in February this year is leveraging our internal CRM tool as a front end. So I want to talk more about this particular solution for technology solutions and what exactly we're doing here and what's the concept. So the challenge that we had when we started this project is we do have our cloud business where we sell all sorts of SaaS products, PaaS, hardware as a service. But to migrate our, let's say, traditional business into that everything as a service state, as a distributor, we need our vendors to move with us and to be prepared to do that. And the truth is, not a lot of vendors are really prepared to go full SaaS or full as a service. So we had this challenge with pricing, with billing processes, with catalogs, all sorts of things that we've been doing for a long time with SKUs. And it's not an easy change just to change everything and almost start from scratch to get to a full everything as a service state. So how do we enable that journey, right? In the traditional way of doing things, as the industry started to evolve and we started to see more subscriptions, consumption-based models, trying to adapt those legacy systems to do that is really hard. So we end up with like thousands of contracts that were managed manually or in spreadsheets or in SharePoint, thousands of manual orders trying to mimic a recurring billing system, problems in credit analysis because if you don't have visibility over your contracts, it's very hard to predict what's going to happen next, just to name a few. Now, with the change that we implemented and having all of our contracts in SAP BRIM and using that as a base for credit analysis and for billing, we started creating this hybrid state where on one hand, I have lots of elements of my everything as a service business model, but at the same time, I'm still supporting all business practices that we consider to be traditional. So with this implementation, what we're telling our vendors is, look, we understand that we cannot change everything at once. You can still keep your deal pricing, you can still keep your renewal practices. You can still keep even your EDI messages. And now we're building a bridge between that world and the new world that is coming, allowing for that transition. So the way we present these things, and this slide that I'm showing right now, as well as the next slide, are two of the slides that we used on our discussions with our vendors about this everything as a service journey. So our value proposition here is really, hey, we can help you get there. We will analyze where you are right now with your processes, and we're going to make sure we adapt those processes so that this hybrid state platform that we have built will help everyone to get there. What we did here, we actually built a playbook with all the description of business processes related to everything as a service, as well as all the functionality that we have implemented in the solution in terms of usage consumption, automated provisioning, et cetera, And we're kind of scoring each vendor against that playbook to tell how close or how far they are from an everything as a service state. And based on that score, we know where they need help and how we can onboard them into this new system to help them with this transition. I think based on our experience and all the conversations we've had so far, there are basically two ways that you can approach this journey to everything as a service. One is really if you have a separate business or you create a separate business unit and you sort of start from scratch in terms of the processes you have and how you handle your customers and your suppliers. So that would basically mean you just build something new and you start migrating things as they mature into your new system, into your new business model. And the other option, and that's what we're doing here at Ingram Micro, and which is a much bigger undertaking, is really to build, let's say, backward compatibility, is to avoid disruption to your customers, is to support everything that you support traditionally, plus all the new features that we need for as a service. So we built a unified catalog. Now we have a single catalog with all SKU offerings and service offerings. We have a unified ordering system where I can mix services offerings with hardware offerings. So we're taking everything that we have, and rather than simply starting something aside, we're merging the two models and offering a unified experience to our customers and to our vendors. So this hybrid state to support recurring revenue, it really starts with the unified catalog and pricing. That's something that we've been working for a long time independently of this everything as a service project. As you know, with the size of Ingram Micro, we have many different business units and product catalogs. And for a few years now, we've been working to integrate all those catalogs and to unify them to provide a single pane of glass to our customers. Then the order fulfillment and order status, that's also unified. So I have an order management system that can deal with all different types of orders and order status, also as part of the same philosophy of the single pane of glass. With our Cloud Blue Connect platform, we're integrating to vendors to get real-time provisioning and activation information on subscriptions, as well as usage data. that will be our consumption data for the BRIM system. And we see that every company is in a different point in this journey. So the flexibility is really what is critical here to get things moving. We have companies that are highly API-driven, that can give us their own APIs and integrate, and we can have lots of real-time information into our system. We have companies that are still working with EDI messages. We have companies that are dropping files on an FTP site in order to share that type of information. But in building a solution that, let's say, is backward compatible to whatever business practices you have, you do have to account for that and make it easy for everyone to migrate to this new model. So right now in our implementation, we have all sorts of different types of integrations. We have API direct integration, but we also have like integrations that were made with parsing files from the vendors to get what we need into our recurring revenue system. Then finally, we have modifications to the subscriptions and renewals. We see that there's not one market standard that everybody's using. It's truly a moving target, and companies are trying to adapt their legacy processes to the new ones. So their flexibility is really important. We found all sorts of different business practices. You have to have some guardrails, but it's important to adapt and to allow different types of changes and renewals to take place. For instance, cases where you have a subscription for 3 years, and when it renews, it will automatically renew for 1 year and not 3 years. Or when I do a modification to a subscription, some companies, they prorate, some companies, they give you the entire month into your new price and new subscription retroactively. There are different types of practices there. And finally, the billing and invoicing, that's where we saw a huge benefit internally because it's really a complete new experience. When you're actually managing your contracts and letting the billing happen automatically every month, it really changes the way we look at customers. It really changes the way we manage the business. And to finalize, the last thing that I would say is, as a little piece of advice, this is really a multi-year journey. Like I said, there are no industry standards that are largely adopted. And we're looking at a moving target. So top-down commitment is really critical because this is not something that can be done in a few months. It's something that even with results in the short term will continue changing, and you have to be flexible and adaptable in order to make that transformation. And with that, I think we're finished with our case study. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rag. I think we're going to hand it back to you, Andrew.
Andrew? All right, well, I'll tell you what, I'll pick it up. Hey, everybody, this is Ken Christ. I am with the SAP Center of Excellence focused on our Billing Revenue Innovation Management Solutions, or BRIM. And what we'd like to go through is a couple of topic items as a panel, and you'll see representation from SAP as well as from our partners Capgemini. I think we might even have some input from our friends at Ingram as well. So let's jump right in and take a look at that first item. And the real question here is, what does it take for a traditional product-oriented company to be able to make that leap and become a service-oriented company with the concepts of everything as a service? And I'll start that off. In my mind, and from my experience with SAP, it really takes three things above and beyond the building of that singular product catalog, right, of product, service, and subscription, and being able to figure out how to monetize your new offerings and everything as a service. The first thing is being able to extend those concepts, and you heard some of this with Ingram, out to all of your sales channels. If you're selling direct, and then we're talking about your salespeople as well as maybe CPQ or Salesforce automation tools. If you're selling indirect, it's how do you integrate out to your partners, and that might be via API, or you heard also cases of EDI in Ingram's story. And the third piece is this the time where everything as a service becomes something you offer as a self-directed sales via e-commerce, and really adopting that mindset of a bundle. I'm going to build together the products and services that my customer is going to use in conjunction with monetizing it together in this concept of a subscription, be able to bring all three of those together across your sales channels. As part of that, recognizing that your sales operations teams have to be aware that they're shifting from a one-time sales approach, going through opportunity management, getting that order and delivering it to the customer and having them pay the invoice, to an ongoing contractual relationship. And you heard again some of this with Ingram. The key element to make that leap then from product to a service is incorporating the mindset and the tools in sales operations so they can handle both that change process for upsell and cross-sell that is so key to success, as well as then incorporating the renewal process, which is no longer just for things like software maintenance or hardware maintenance, but now really is recurring that idea of the ongoing relationship under that subscription. So the renewal process takes on new importance, and making sure that the sales teams and sales operations teams have what they need to be able to accomplish that. The third thing, and that's really guiding, is the idea of ensuring that the finance side of the business has everything from an audit trail, and that means for each of those billable items, as well as the concepts of revenue recognition for the bundles that you're now selling, everything as a service, as well as all the tools for managing things like payments and collections and the other operational capabilities that we talked about in the Ingram example. So really, those are the three things that I see as key elements beyond the product catalog that folks need to take into account when they're making that leap from product focus to everything as a service, service focus. I'd be interested, though, to hear Capgemini's perspectives on that. So, Suraj, what do you have to add to that conversation?
Sure, Ken. Once again, Suraj Ramakrishnan, principal at Capgemini. Ken, to tell you very honestly, what we have seen, and based on the research that indicates that by 2023, at least 75% of the organizations selling direct to customers will offer subscription services, right? So if we go a little bit more further detail, like 23.2% expected annual growth rate from 2020 to 2027. That is the extent of growth we are anticipating. So what does that mean, right? So when we talk about so much of compounded annual growth, front office capability for any organization comes into the spotlight, right? So your operating sales channel needs to expand. So rethinking your commerce platform to provide the customer a personalized experience is extremely paramount. And some of the clients with who we are working are asking how to package product and service bundles by providing a frictionless experience, right? That keeps on coming all the time. Like, I like to call it a relationship commerce more than an omnichannel e-commerce, because ultimately you are personalizing these offerings, keeping in customer in the center, right? Some of the key aspects of relationship commerce is offering the customer the ability to pivot to a subscription-based, a membership-based model, right? Additionally, creating a complementing sales incentive for your field services and the sales representatives structure is also very key. So that's one area we are trying to help many of our clients think through. How do you keep on motivating your sales representatives and field service agents to kind of push the products and the product offering, bundle offering with the services, and help them with the overall user experience, both internally and externally, and that's going to be the is going to be the key to create a win-win consumption model offering. Secondly, also from a supply chain and operation standpoint, ability to keep a flexible inventory, right? So you send a particular equipment to a particular customer, and if the customer says that stuff is not working, right? So on the fly, being able to manage a flexible inventory to swap that out and keep that customer service level to a highest possible extent in terms of making sure products get to the customer's door in a very nimble and a very agile fashion, right? And lastly, back office, right? Usage and consumption-based billing and revenue management. Finance is a large piece in terms of how deferred revenue recognition, etc., are being brought forth from a challenge standpoint. How do you address your, let's say, ASC 606, which is a very, very common thing that many of the finance organizations and the clients are asking for? Hey, how do I make sure that when we get into a product and a service bundling, how does the revenue recognition work, right? So those are some of the key challenges that we are facing, we are seeing that the clients are facing and coming to us to move from a product-based organization to becoming a more personalized services and offering in terms of whatever the service is. And that's very, very prevalent. That's what we have seen from a Capgemini standpoint. Andrew, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Suraj. I like that notion of a relationship commerce and the ability to meet our customer wherever the customer is, whether they're using EDI or super modern APIs. And to do that in a scalable way is really the magic of the challenge. Let's take a look at our second question here, which is, what are some of the trends that you're seeing as it relates to servitization and this shift to as-a-service models? So Suraj, keep us going here. What are you seeing specifically in terms of different types of companies and businesses making this shift?
Sure. So Andrew, that's a great question. And in terms of industry trend, everything as a service is a very common phenomenon, not just in the new companies. Like take an example of Peloton. They sell the hard goods, the bike or the treadmill, but guess what? What they sell as a recurring basis is the fitness as a service, the packaged service from a fitness program standpoint. Take another example, Dollar Shave Club. They sell grooming as a service, right? And they went on to build a unicorn or $1 billion industry just by selling that and incentivizing the consumers and creating that personalized connection so that the customers are now getting into the mode of buying on a recurring basis the grooming components, right? These are not just from a new age companies, but traditional companies. Like take an example of Philips or Rolls-Royce, where Rolls-Royce used to sell, and they were very famous in selling global jet engines, because that's what they used to manufacture. They pride for it, right? And now what they have now become is equipment as a service. So they are trying to not just sell the product or maybe lease the product to their consumers, but the digital service and the ecosystem that they're building around the engine to say how you're tracking your assets real time. How are you triggering your predictive maintenance, etc. That is kind of becoming the way to kind of make the inroad with those customers on an ongoing basis. And that is what is basically helping the clients or the companies to get into the revenue or the subscription-based model. And Capgemini is working with many of our clients, both in the TMT space and the consumer product goods in the implementation, as well as upfront strategic discussion to help them take that next step, right? Many of our clients are asking for system demos and to say, hey, how does these use cases, right? I'll take an example, logistics and transportation industry, right? In that space, we are seeing many of our clients asking us for solutions. As an example, toll tag device, right? The e-pass or whatever you use that, they now are getting into the mode of selling tolling as a service, where we are seeing a consumption-based model based on the miles that the car has driven, right? That's one use case. So every time when we are encountering these kind of use cases, it becomes imperative that we start solutioning them and showing a tool enablement to say, what does it take from not only just subscription management and billing, but we get into the space of machine learning and IoT device. And that's where I want to call upon one of my colleagues from UK, Mike, who's very, very close and very passionate in terms of bridging that gap from an industry solution standpoint. So, Mike, I know you're on the call. You want to talk something around the fleet as a service that we are building for some of our clients?
Yeah, and maybe just to sort of rewind a little bit as well, I've got, a couple of really good examples from, different industries, I guess, that you wouldn't traditionally associate with providing services. So probably, two of my favorite come from facilities management because there's a really strong sustainability angle. So we're seeing organizations providing, heat and cooling as a service, where the supplier sort of contracts to keep a building or a distribution facility or, maybe a laboratory at a given temperature. And the supplier is really, taking that risk and even sort of contracting to provide the right amount of energy, which is pretty bold and innovative. And then we've got Philips doing lighting as a service. So they're sort of monitoring buildings, and if nobody's in them, they're turning the lights down. If it's a sunny day, they're adjusting the brightness. And they're also sort of providing that full life cycle, so they'll recycle the equipment at the end of its lifespan. And that's really encouraged them to make the light.
Seems like we're having a problem with Mike's
the parts much more great. We've got one of our customers, in the crop science business. So, okay, I'll carry on. But yeah, in the crop science world, we've got one of our customers trialing sort of seeds and pest protection as a service. So they're putting soil sensors out in fields, and they're using drones to look for pests. And they're charging the farmers, based on the yield coming from the fields, which is brilliant. It's a win-win for the supplier and the farmer. So we really just wanted to sort of say that there are very, interesting use cases outside of traditional industries. So I guess on the fleet as a service, another one of our customers are already providing cars direct to consumers on a subscription basis, where they sort of wrap in insurance, servicing and tires. And now they're taking that to the next level. So they're providing fleets of cars, maybe to a car rental business or for company cars. And what I love about this is there's potential for loads of extra data-driven value-adding services, so monitoring and managing the efficiency of that fleet. Location-based services such as theft management if a car's sort of moving unexpectedly out of its usual pattern. And then you've got managing the condition of those fleets and predictive maintenance to make sure that you've got as many cars on the road as possible, which if you're a car rental company really matters to you. And this is where we've built out a full pilot solution using S/4HANA, Hybris and BRIM, Intelligent Asset Management Suite, and some really clever integration on the IoT side of things. And then if we just move on to, I guess, my final sort of use case, which is really in the healthcare area, so diagnostics as a service. And I guess I love this one as well because it shows really how a wide ecosystem, with lots of different actors and personas can all come together in the best interest of the patient. So diagnostic machinery, it's a very capital intensive business. You've got a very complex asset. And what we're seeing now, especially as there's pressure on healthcare providers and hospitals to drive down costs, is that digitalization is allowing all of the different providers to work together. So the equipment manufacturer is providing the equipment as a service, so they're making sure it's running and effective and monitored and managed, but they're also actually offering the expertise to analyze the results with a combination of sort of machine learning, AI, and trained professionals. Because one of the biggest problems the industry has is the number of trained technicians who can operate the machinery and actually interpret the scans. A lot of scans are cancelled because the hospitals just don't have the staff, which is fantastic. So I think that's a great use case that leads to lower costs, more efficient use of assets, and what really matters for the patient is faster results and diagnosis. So Ken, any thoughts on other trends?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. From SAP's perspective, we build solutions for, I think, 26 different industries. And so this idea of moving from product to service, we are seeing specific industry trends. But one of the things I would say is this idea of servitization is pervasive across all of them. And from the BRIM perspective, which is where I come in, we're agnostic to that. So there's a couple of things that you've heard that I would like to sum up here that I think really speak to trends that we're seeing across all those industries. And really the first one is that idea that we're moving from beyond this idea of a subscription, right? That all you can eat, monthly recurring charge, to really go towards outcome as a service. Some of the things Mike were talking about directly plays into that. All of this event data feed information that's coming into the service provider can be used for managing that relationship and, in fact, monetizing that relationship. So we're seeing a key shift to using those usage, consumption, event-based feeds and tying it into things like balance management for the customer and having it impact pricing and having it impact how they're charged against the outcomes that they've signed up for. As a second piece of this, allowing the customers to start off small and be able to scale elegantly is something else that we're seeing more and more incorporation of. So they might start as a pay-as-you-go type of a plan and then move to something that's more outcome-based and has certain preloaded characteristics built into it because it's more cost-effective to have that longer contract work underneath those terms. So what we're seeing as the trend is the incorporation of those change processes, how I recognize and treat upsell and cross-sell as part of the relationship, understanding that it's going to start in one place, but we're expecting it to move someplace else, and we don't want to be in the business of rip and replace. We want to have one relationship with the customer, one contract that makes those changes over time. The third piece of that is really around this idea of entitlements. When I sign up for a service, monetization says how much I'm paying for it, but entitlements comes in to say, what are the features and functions and users, et cetera, that I have access to this service with? How might that change throughout that life cycle of the customer and give me more features and functions as I grow with that service relationship? So entitlement management becomes an increasing thing that we're seeing as part of these move from product to service enablements as part of that life cycle trend that we see. So, those are the three things that I've seen. Andrew, why don't we go on to the next topic?
Yeah, so thanks, Ken. While I've got you, let's talk specifically about what SAP is doing in terms of helping handle a lot of this complexity and a lot of these challenges. Let's kind of drill it down another couple levels, if you don't mind. What are you doing? What's the rest of SAP doing across these 26 industries to really help take companies into these new models?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the first thing really is the requirement for both agility and velocity in getting to market and being able to make changes to take advantage of the changing landscape that we find ourselves in, right? And that's only sped up because of the pandemic. That's even taken to a further step. Not only is it agility to get yourself to market, but now how do I incorporate my partners into that from a multi-sided revenue perspective? In other words, do I have front-end partners that are helping me sell my product as a service? Do I have development partners or content partners that I'm bundling into the service that I'm offering, all of whom might need a piece of the revenue that I collect for the service? That level of complexity to manage both the monetization of the revenue stream and then the settlement of what the different partners get as part of that is a key complexity that SAP is addressing with its approach to everything as a service. The second piece of this is that comprehensive support for moving product and service into this idea of monetization, right? So in the past where I would have to fulfill shipping you a good or provisioning a service, I still need to do that in the everything as a service model, even though I'm monetizing it now more on a recurring basis, right? So making sure that I can have a front-end order process that allows me to take all of the requirements for configuring the product, setting up whatever services might be needed, whether that's install or some type of support that's provided, and of course, being able to wrap that up with keying off of the monetization program so that as those products are set up by the services, they can then be monetized automatically as part of that stream. And doing that all together is, again, something else that SAP is addressing with its solutions. The third thing is really enabling a single financial system of record. That concept that you have all of this revenue flowing into the platform that might be coming from your own systems, or in certain cases, you might even have monetization elements that come from third parties or other systems outside of SAP, and be able to bring those together so I can provide a single invoice to the customer, and of course, at the same time, be doing that settlement for my partners and being able to recognize the revenue using IFRS Reg 15 or ASC 606, having that all wrapped up with one bow so my financial team can handle this shift to a recurring revenue stream is something else that SAP is really built upon its foundation as a financials ERP company to give that capability to. So those are the elements that I see as complexities in making that shift. Why don't we talk to Mike and see, in some of the industries he was just talking about, what are the complexities that he's seeing?
Thanks. So yeah, I guess what I love about the SAP solution set is that there really is something for every part of the end-to-end solution. I've not yet come across a business model or something that we couldn't do in and around SAP using SAP technologies. And at the same time, the platform, the solutions now are so open, so it is easy to integrate hyperscaler services if you want to, if you need to, or existing solutions that you might have can all be plugged in really, really easily. I guess we've heard a lot about subscriptions and CPQ today, so maybe I'll concentrate on the other end, which is, maybe in the asset sort of intensive industries where you've got equipment out in the field, really out at what we're calling the edge. So all of these assets need managing, updating, monitoring, and that's where SAP's got some great solutions for doing that. You've got to get the IoT streams back to know if the asset's performing. That drives the billing and usage, and this is where the asset management suite from SAP, with a full digital twin capability to consolidate all of the asset data into one place, is fantastic. And, that means that if there is a problem with something, you can automatically create a service ticket so that the engineer turns up, with the right parts on the van, so he can fix things there and then, which is, how many times has that happened to you with your car or something like that? That there's a delay because the engineer didn't know what car you've actually got and what's fitted to it. And I guess my challenge back to SAP is, we're seeing subscriptions for software, which is fantastic. What we'd love to see and what our customers would love to see is, SAP licensing its technology and its solutions by process, or the usage of that process without really thinking about the underlying, components or products that are licensed separately. So it would be great if SAP could actually take that to the next level, and maybe one day that will happen. So back to you, I think, Andrew.
Great, and thanks very much. I think we have time for one or two questions from the field here. There's a question that came in. I'm not sure if I've got it completely right, but it's really about how do you think about product as a service model where it might be sustainable product as a service, so building products and delivering them for as long as they can run and be delivered. Do you guys see any differences as we go towards looking at the lifetime of a product, whether that's relatively finite or not? Any change in these models that way? And I hope I'm characterizing the question the right way here.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a quick answer to that, which is that I think it's inherent in the business model that it's a good thing for the supplier to make equipment or tires or cars that last longer and perform better. It's in everybody's interest for that to happen. So I think it just happens as part of product development and continuous improvement. And that means that the consumer gets better lifespan out of the product, and it's more sustainable and lasts longer, and it can be recycled, as we heard with the Philips example.
Yeah, and Mike, we're also seeing a big play with entitlements as part of that, because if you can imagine that the entitlement record that's tied to that relationship, that contract, is also tracking that device, its age, its software revision level, what the last service was. Those all become data points that can now be used for managing that asset as part of the subscription and turning around to say, oh, here's where we need to make sure that you've got the latest software update, or you need to swap this out. It's no longer going to support future capabilities. And having that record that's part of what the customer is utilizing, I think becomes key towards that next generation of what everything as a service is going to be all about.
Great. Now we can squeeze in one more question here, and Ken, let's stay with you and then go to Mike. But what would you describe as maybe the sweet spot when organizations go to an as-a-service model? You touched on a little bit earlier, but what's really the role and the opportunity for predictive analytics, whether it's in financial forecasting, maintenance, predictive maintenance? Where do you see the real, again, sweet spot for predictive analytics and maybe AI ML, if you want to throw that in there in the last couple minutes?
I think a lot of it has to do with where that everything as a service is being positioned by industry. If it's something that's a heavy equipment perspective, then of course, preventive maintenance is going to be really key, and the analytics to be able to provide that are going to be driving that. If it's something where you're providing digital services, then I would say it's much more on the revenue side, either from the perspective of how overall are our services being adapted, how are we doing from a margin perspective, or it could be looking at customer life cycles. How do I start to use predictive analytics capabilities to understand where my customers should be taking advantage of other additional services that we offer, or more advantageous pricing plans, et cetera. So I think that sweet spot really is going to be more industry focused to determine whether it's something that's more tied towards revenue-based analytics, or what we were describing more as performance, or even stability type of analytics that go on.
Mike, 30 seconds, any thoughts?
Data set. Yes, it's really to join up different data sets from parts of the organization that were siloed before, really around product design and development, sales, service. Now the data is all should all be in one place, and the insight and intelligence you can get back from real world usage then drives feeds back into product design and development. So it's that end-to-end full life cycle. I think that's a fantastic opportunity.
Terrific. Well, we are right at the top of the hour. I want to thank Capgemini and SAP in particular, and a terrific case study from Ingram Micro. And with that, Elizabeth, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and a big thank you to all of our speakers today. And thank you to all participants for joining our webinar. We hope you found the information valuable. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.